Greetings, history buffs, to another rib-tickling episode of hilarious forgotten history, where we waltz through the whimsical wonders of yesteryears, only to trip over the absurdities of the past. Today, we're off to Japan, the land of the rising sun, and for many centuries, the land of the rising body count. In this episode, we'll uncover how a nation transformed from samurai slayers in snazzy armor to World War II villains, then pulled off a post-war PR stunt that would make Houdini blush. So grab your popcorn, sit back, and try to keep your head, unlike many in our tale. Our whimsical journey kicks off in feudal Japan, a land of haikus, tea parties, and, oh yes, non-stop over-the-top action. During the wild Sengoku period, the Warring States era, Japan was like one big chaotic Game of Thrones episode, but with more swords and no dragons. Ever heard of Tsujigiri? No? Well, hold on to your kimonos. It's the ultimate proof of samurai bushido. And if you think the samurai were only tough on others, think again. They kept some of the fun for themselves. Enter seppuku, ritual self-kamikaze by disembowelment, aka suicide with extra steps. Take the Battle of Sekigahara, 1600, for instance, where around 160,000 samurai gathered for a colossal showdown to decide who'd get the top job in Japan. The infamous warlord Oda Nobunaga once decided he wasn't a fan of a certain Buddhist monastery. So in 1571, he flamboyantly torched Mount Hiei, taking out thousands of monks, women and children in one dramatic swoop. So in a nutshell, feudal Japan was hardcore. What could possibly go wrong in the centuries to follow? Fast forward a few hundred years, Japan modernized, got some snazzy new technology, a modern army, but don't worry, they held on to that brutal spirit. By the 1930s and 40s, during World War II, Japan said, "Hey world, you thought we were violent before? Hold my sake." Our first stop, Nanjing, China, 1937. Japan invades China and captures the city of Nanjing, and then all hell breaks loose. What came to be known as the Rape of Nanjing was basically a 6-week-long murder and rape festival. And no, we're not exaggerating for effect. Estimates of the Chinese killed range from 100,000 to over 300,000. That's like wiping out a medium-sized city's population for kicks. Chinese civilians and even surrendered soldiers were butchered en masse. And the rape in Rape of Nanjing is sadly literal. Tens of thousands of women were sexually assaulted. Officers even turned massacre into a sporting event. Famously, 2 Japanese officers had a little competition. Who could behead 100 people first with their swords? Yes, they treated human lives like a point-scoring game at the arcade. By the time the orgy of violence in Nanjing ended, the city was a corpse-filled wasteland. Even some Nazi officials in Nanjing, and you know you're bad when Nazis are appalled, wrote home describing Japanese troops merrily killing and raping with abandon. As if conventional murder wasn't enough, parts of the Japanese military thought, why not mix science with sadism? Enter Unit 731, the Imperial Army's very own mad scientist club. Officially, it was the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department. They practiced vivisection on live prisoners. Yes, dissecting people alive without anesthesia, just to see what happened. They deliberately infected prisoners with plague, cholera, anthrax, basically turning humans into lab rats for germ warfare. Frostbite experiments were a favorite too. They'd dunk prisoners' limbs in ice water, freeze them solid, then whack them to observe how frozen flesh shatters, all in the name of the science. Now, you'd think people running a house of horrors would face some serious justice, but here comes one of history's dark little ironies. After Japan surrendered, Unit 731's perpetrators mostly dodged prosecution. If you thought mass murder and mad science were the whole story, think again. The Imperial Japanese Army was an overachiever in the cruelty department. Next on the list, comfort women, a euphemism so absurd it could make Orwell blush. These women were from all over Asia, Korea, China, the Philippines, Indonesia, you name it, even as far as the Netherlands. The Imperial Army's bright idea set up a huge network of military brothels to service the troops and supposedly prevent random mass rapes. They kidnapped or coerced girls and women, some as young as teens, and forced them into repeated rape day in, day out. Even today, the topic is a diplomatic flashpoint, with surviving victims, now grandmothers in their 90s, pleading for genuine acknowledgement, while some Japanese revisionists act like it's an annoying rumor. So Japan's World War II rap sheet included mass murder, ghoulish experiments, and systematic sexual slavery, among other hits like torture of POWs, torching villages, the Bataan Death March, etc. In short, Imperial Japan checked pretty much every box on the war crimes bingo card. By 1945, Japan's reign of terror hit a hard stop, courtesy of 2 American atomic mic drops on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The war ended with Japan in ruins, millions dead, and a collective international "what just happened" moment. After Japan's surrender, the United States occupied the country under General MacArthur, the big boss of the occupation. The Japanese Emperor Hirohito, who had been worshipped like a god, was not even put on trial. In fact, he got to keep his throne. War crime tribunals did happen at the Tokyo trials, and a handful of top Japanese leaders were executed or jailed. But many others who had blood on their hands got off lightly, or even became leaders in the new US-allied Japan. With US help, Japan's economy bounced back astonishingly fast in the 1950s and 60s. By the 80s, Japan was an economic superpower, making the world's electronics and cars. Instead of military parades, Japan gave us anime, manga, Hello Kitty, sushi and bullet trains. Not a bad trade-up. One minute they're bayoneting civilians, a few decades later they're hosting the Olympics and exporting Nintendo consoles. Tourists flocked to see beautiful temples and cherry blossoms. Business folks marveled at Japanese technology and work ethic, and kids everywhere fell in love with Pokemon. Who has time to talk about wartime massacres when you're busy debating who's the best Pokemon starter? And so, in the grand narrative, Japan kind of got to hit the reset button on its international reputation. Sure, the countries that suffered under Japan never forgot. They would give Japan the side eye and occasional angry statements whenever some official tried to whitewash the past. But on the global stage, especially in the West, Japan wasn't dragged through the mud like Germany was. Instead of decades of collective guilt, Japan had decades of economic growth and cultural cool factor. Thus, within a generation or two, Japan went from imperial warmonger to the land of zen and gadgets, largely escaping the perpetual stigma that one might have expected. It's the kind of historical makeover that would make extreme home makeover shows jealous. Welcome to the Axis Powers reunion show. In one corner we have Germany forever wearing the "I'm sorry" dunce cap for World War II. In another, Italy, who seems to have wandered out of the blame spotlight humming "That's Amore." And finally Japan, who's somehow neither wearing the dunce cap nor singing apology arias, having largely slipped out of the spotlight altogether. You can't wave a German flag too enthusiastically without someone raising an eyebrow. German schoolchildren get a thorough education in what our grandparents did, OMG. The country has spent the last 80 years saying mea culpa on repeat. Basically, Germany is on a perpetual guilt trip. It's like they're stuck in historical detention writing "I will not invade Poland" on the chalkboard 1,000,000 times. Don't get me wrong, Germany has done a commendable job owning up to its past, countless memorials, apologies, reparations, the whole 9 yards. Italy. Italy was also on Team Axis, led by Benito il Duce Mussolini, a dictator with a jawline rivaled only by his monumental ego. Sure, Italy had its share of war crimes. They did nasty stuff in Ethiopia with poison gas, and in the Balkans. Italy's military became more famous for surrendering or switching sides faster than you can cook spaghetti. By 1943, Italians had basically said, "Mussolini, you're cancelled," and switched to the Allied side after tossing old Benito out. End result, when the blame game started post-war, a lot of people kind of shrugged at Italy and went, those Italians, their hearts weren't in it, bless them. Now pass the pizza. After all, Italy gave us opera, gelato and Ferraris. Hard to stay mad at that. Now back to Japan. Unlike Italy, Japan didn't exactly bungle its war effort. They were terrifyingly competent at conquest and cruelty. And unlike Italy, Japan fought to the bitter end. So by all logic, Japan should have been in the same doghouse as Germany, if not a deeper one in Asia. Yet, as we've seen, they managed a historical Houdini act. How? Partly thanks to Cold War politics and US support, as we discussed, but also a big factor. Most of Japan's victims were Asian, and the uncomfortable truth is that Western media and history education in the decades after World War II focused far more on European events. By the 1980s, Americans were buying up Sony Walkmans and watching Dragon Ball Z, not boycotting Japan over wartime massacres. Japan's wartime leader, Hideki Tojo, just didn't have the same staying power in global villain lore. Hitler was and is the ultimate symbol of evil, easily personified and forever hated. The emperor was kept as a peaceful figurehead post-war, so he escaped vilification too. Lastly, Japan played the long game of selective acknowledgement. They gave just enough apologies to say, "We apologized," though often couched with vague wording. They emphasized their suffering, the bombings, in domestic narratives, which, while legitimate suffering, conveniently cast them as victims rather than perpetrators. Internationally, the US shielded them. For example, the US even helped downplay the Nanjing massacre initially. I mean, when's the last time you saw a World War II movie where the main bad guys were Japanese war criminals and not Nazis? Probably a rare find. So there you have it, a tale of three ex-Axis powers. One perpetually flogged with guilt, one who danced away with a goofy grin, and one that managed to vanish from the scene of the crime and reappear doing a peace sign in a Hello Kitty shirt. Japan's long-standing history of brutality, from samurai slaughters and ritual suicides to Nanjing and Unit 731, is as real a part of its heritage as sushi and samurai movies. Yet, thanks to a remarkable combination of historical forgetfulness, clever diplomacy, and the world's short attention span, Japan largely dodged the kind of lasting infamy that Germany got stuck with. This isn't to say Japan hasn't acknowledged anything. They have, here and there, in carefully worded statements. But the global collective memory, it's a selective beast. It seems to prefer clear-cut villains and storylines. Nazis equal bad, Italians equal comic relief, Japanese yukari, oh look, cherry blossoms. The result? Japan today gets to enjoy a reputation as a peaceful, innovative nation, which it certainly is now, without its modern citizens bearing the same weight of ancestral shame that, say, young Germans are taught to carry. Is that fair? Probably not to the victims who still remember, but it's history. Or rather, it's hilarious, forgotten history, the kind we shine a light on in this show. Join us next time on Hysterically Forgotten History for another romp through the past's ridiculously neglected chapters. Until then, stay curious, and remember, those who forget history might just end up hosting a sarcastic documentary about it. Sayonara! Oh yes, and please don't forget to click the subscribe button below.